Hello and welcome to Wide Angle once again. And we start this part of our program with an interview with Iran's Foreign Minister Mohammad Javad Zarif.
So good to be with you.
Well, now there is a breeze blowing in Tehran, they say. Even though you've had the most freezing summer in decades, and yet they say that there is a breeze blowing. What is actually happening?
I think the Iranian people, when they went in huge numbers to the polls last June and showed their interest in change through the political process and through the ballot box, by showing both that they trusted the ballot box and also showing that they wanted a different type of interaction with the rest of the world. Interaction based on respect, based on mutual interest, based on equal footing, and at the same time based on constructive engagement. That created an opportunity not only for the new government that was established following that election, but also for the rest of the world to try to put an end to the zero-sum approach they had to their relations with Iran for the past decade, which had only produced disaster for them and economic hardship for the Iranian people.
You have worked with other presidents also, in other Iranian presidents. The West has created this a perception that somehow President Hassan Rouhani is a new, fresh breath of air in Iran. What is the real difference between President Rouhani's style and the style of, say, President Mahmoud Ahmadinejad?
They're two different people. They're the product of two different political environments. They were voted in under two very different political contexts in Iran. So we expect President Rouhani to rely on the power of the Iranian people, to rely on the intrinsic abilities of Iran as a nation and as a revolution in order to be able to proceed with foreign policy. His understanding of Iranian society and of international relations, in my view, are much deeper than those of his predecessor. And I believe in that he can make a real difference. But a lot depends on the international community, because President Rouhani and people like myself were involved in the negotiations with the West. At that time, it was only 3 EU countries in order to resolve the current crisis. At that time, the West took the wrong decisions based on illusions rather than on realities, and it produced a public outburst which resulted in the election of the former president.
Tell me, sir, there is a gradual lifting of sanctions. How much of this has really happened, and is it enough to impact on the lives of Iranian people, for instance?
I think what has happened is that there was a train, if you will, that was moving downhill, basically with sanctions building up. And more than the actual sanctions that were being pushed, sometimes through arms twisting by the Americans, which continue, unfortunately. But there was a psychology. There was an international climate that doing business with Iran was sort of unnatural or unhealthy. That climate is now broken. It's changed. And I think the impact, because the consensus, there was an attempt to securitize Iran. And a lot of money, a lot of investment had gone into that. The Zionists, some others, some lobbies in the United States had pushed an agenda to present Iran as a threat, not only to the United States, but even to the region, to its immediate neighborhood. Now, that entire image is crumbling. And with the crumbling of that securitization, you have a different international environment, which is much more receptive.
Sanctions are being lifted.
Sanctions are being lifted, but not as fast as the environment is being broken.
I gather that it is going to be a sort of a tit-for-tat process. You will release sanctions as you make progress in Geneva on the nuclear issue. Now, this kind of bargaining, one of the two sides may end up at the table without any chips.
Well, it depends on how you try to negotiate. We have a first step whose aim was to create the necessary breathing space for all of us to start thinking about a future not under the pressure of impending sanctions and impending new centrifuges being built by Iran, so that that climate in and of itself was not conducive to positive and conducive negotiations. Now we have removed that, and we are now engaged in an attempt to find a comprehensive deal. That is not a tit for tat. If we want to do that, if we want to succeed in that comprehensive deal, we got to put aside sort of the Bazari mentality. Yeah, I know. Some people persist because there was a Cold War mentality that was so prevalent in the world, and its remnants are so difficult to set aside. And that Cold War mentality required winners and losers, required a zero-sum game. But the reality today is, and the reality of the past 8-9 years has been, that a zero-sum mentality produces negative-sum outcome. In the last 8 or 9 years, everybody has lost. If you look at it, if you calculate, the net result of the past 8 years has been 18,800 centrifuges that Iran has added to its stock of centrifuges spinning in Iran. And on the other hand, a pressure on Iranian economy which turned a 5% growth in Iranian economy into a negative 5% decline in the economy. So at the end of the day, everybody lost. It's not because of that we are negotiating. It's because of the fact that everybody has come to realize, particularly the West, that through pressure they will not be able to put an end to Iran's nuclear program. It's a peaceful program, but at the same time it's a fact of life. It's something underground, homegrown, based on Iranian technology. So they've come to realize, as President Obama very clearly said, that he doesn't like the fact that Iran has centrifuges, but he has to live with it, because that has become a new reality. Now, this new reality can be dealt with in a way which is in our interest, because we believe that nuclear weapons do not augment our security, and we believe even a perception that Iran pursues nuclear weapons is detrimental to our security because of our own strategic calculations, both in the immediate neighborhood as well as in the wider global context. So for that, we believe that neither of us will benefit from the continuation of the old paradigm. We need a paradigm shift. And that paradigm shift requires us to put aside that type of mentality that this is tit for tat. We both want to achieve an objective, and in the comprehensive deal, although the first phase was basically a tit for tat, the comprehensive deal needs to be something that we both can look at.
Any deadline?
The deadline, we have set 2 deadlines basically. One is July 20th and one is next January 20th. January 20th, 2015 is the date that we are supposed, based on the Geneva Plan of Action, to reach a comprehensive agreement and to start implementing it. So that we have 11 months to go. But the closer deadline is the deadline of the termination of the first phase, which is 6 months after its initiation, which was January 20th. So by July 20th, we will reach a point where we need to decide. Hopefully by then, and I believe we can, reach an agreement. If not, we can extend it for another 6 months. But based on the joint plan of action that we adopted on the 24th of November last year in Geneva, we only have until 20th of January 2015 to make our minds whether we want to have a deal. And I believe a deal is in the interest of everybody.